going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another panel for you guys. A lot of talking points to get through today, and let's bring on the panel. We have got Josh King, who obviously was on the watch along this weekend, bringing us home 3 points. How you doing, Josh?
Good, feeling good. Yeah, hoping that we can beat Chelsea, and yeah, feeling good.
And we've also got Danny Kiriakou, a.k.a. The Bun, a.k.a. The Problem. And here he is. Danny, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good. How are you guys? Yeah, it's good. Good. Everything's good at the moment. Everything's good, man. I'm looking forward to the show today.
Everything's calm, nothing to be stressed about.
Positive vibes all around. That's what I like to see. Come on.
You're the problem, Danny. You're the
problem. All right, let's get into it. Let's just get straight into it and go to our first topic. And it's surrounding Heung-Min Son. And obviously, we know about Heung-Min Son. He's had his best performances for Spurs coming from the bench this season. Has struggled in games where he has started this season. So the question is, should Son stay on the bench or should he start in the next game against Chelsea and for the foreseeable future? We'll start with you, Josh. What are you thinking?
Specifically about Chelsea, I would definitely put him on the bench for me, just because it's worked in the last game now, and you don't want to just, he had that point in the last Leicester game, didn't he? Where not the last Leicester game, the one before, where he came on and scored a hat-trick. Next game, he was back to being rubbish again. So you want to keep that hunger, I would say. But also, I was listening to something that Nathan from the Extra Inch was saying, which is like, can you imagine having to deal with Richarlison for 60, 65 minutes where, he's elbowing, fighting for every single ball. He's just a handful. He's totally different to Son, where he's physical and he actually kind of like tires you out physically. Son, it's more a mental thing. You have to worry about when he's making those runs and stuff. He's not getting in and around you. But having to deal with that, whoever their left back or left centre back is or whatever, and then, or their right back even, and then Son coming on against tired legs, using his pace, which is already starting to wane a little bit, as he gets older. I think it's a good option to have. But yeah, I'd keep him on the bench for now. Maybe the next 2 or 3 games, and if he keeps on playing well, or his replacement, whoever that is, like Richarlison or Danjuma or whoever it is, if they're not doing well, then you'd look at starting Son again. But we've done this before. He needs now a run on the bench for me. Always should be brought on. He always should get minutes, but I think he needs to stay on the bench for a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting because me and Sim, we spoke about that in the post-match review about Richarlison, how he physically kind of tires out the centre-backs and Sonny can come on and do his thing against tired legs. And I think it's a really good point, to be honest. Danny, how are you feeling about the situation?
Yeah, I've been saying this for a while now. Like, I think Son he's been really, like, no disrespect to Son because he's one of our best players, but he's been pathetic this season, like to his standards, to what we expect of him. So, for me, I think what I've seen the last 2 times he's actually come off the bench, he's got 4 goals in two sub appearances. So, you can obviously see it's causing him to react to his situation a lot more by coming off the bench and impacting the game a lot more than, say, any of the other players will impact the game. Like, I think he impacts the game more than, well, he has done technically more than anyone we've had this season, and he's only come off the bench twice. So for me, I think if you want to talk about like squad rotation and things like that, I think Richarlison needs to have that little run in the team, give him a couple of games. And I think it will only do Son the world of good. If he comes on against Chelsea, scores a goal, if he comes on against the next match, scores a goal or sets up a goal, it's gonna keep him motivated to try and stay on that path and try get his form up again and get to the level where we know Son can be consistently. And I think, like Josh was saying, I think you've got players like Danjuma. I would like to see Danjuma given a little bit of a chance as well. But for me right now, I think Richarlison has to be the one who's got to get that run first. And I just think the reasons why Son coming off the bench can only help Tottenham more, because when we are struggling to break teams down, I know we've had injuries this season, a lot of injuries, but when we are struggling to break teams down, you want someone who's going to come on like a Son, who's got that quality in him, that you give him that one chance, he's going to put that ball in the back of the net. And that's exactly what he did against West Ham. And he took the touch, was a brilliant touch on his left foot. And there's a great, on his right foot, sorry, outside of the right foot. And it was a great finish as well. And you could see the confidence in that finish. Like you could see the confidence straight away by the way that he controlled that ball. And there's a great pass from Harry Kane, and then tucked it away, like as you see Son of old, basically. So I think Son on the bench is definitely a good thing for us, and I think we should embrace it more.
Yeah, I kind of am feeling the same as you two. I think definitely in this next game against Chelsea, I personally believe Son should be on the bench. I'm not sure if I prefer Richarlison or Danjuma. I mean, Richarlison always leaves you wanting more, and Danjuma just hasn't had that go yet. But Sim, how are you feeling about it?
I feel like it's a difficult balancing act when it comes to this question, because whether a player starts or not, a lot is to do with usually their form, the form of the player who's coming in for them, and also how it's going to help the team. Now, with the Son question, it's difficult when he's just come on and scored. Obviously, he wants to be starting every game. He is our best player from left wing, whatever you want to say about his form and Richarlison and Danjuma. He is our best player. So we know the link up with Kane is always still a vital part of our team. So when we're putting him on the bench, are we just doing that? Like, if we're doing it as a tactic to exploit tired legs, then that's something. But if it's to do with kind of how it's going to benefit your team, like exponentially, like you got to remember when Son's come on and he's scored these goals, we've been winning in both these games. Against Leicester, we're 3-2 up. Against West Ham, we're already 1-0 up. So these are prime examples of Son coming on, and this is perfect for him because the opposition have to come out a bit. They have to chase the game, and that leaves all the space for Son to run into and exploit that space. If he's coming on when we're already losing or we're drawing or something, it could be a very different situation. Maybe he won't be as effective as he is now when we're already winning. And do you want to risk not having him from the start, and then him not having enough time to affect the game when he does come on if we're not winning at that point? You know, if he comes on and we're losing and he can't turn it around, you're thinking, well, why didn't we just start him when he can make a difference? Especially, for example, if Richarlison does start and he misses a few chances and then we're already losing. So there is a difficult balancing act to be had there. But what I would say is I feel like when you buy a player like Richarlison, you spend 60 million on him, and Son has been playing the way he has been playing, you have to give him a run, and I think you have to give him a chance to kind of have that chance to prove himself, because it's no good him having one appearance here, one appearance there, off the right, one appearance off the left, 5 minutes on a sub. He needs a consistent run of form. And I feel like he hasn't shown his best at Tottenham so far. I feel like he hasn't been able to find his rhythm, and I feel like it's only fair that he gets a chance. What's it called, to have a consistent run of games, at least 3 or 4. So I would start him on that basis, but I would be careful in terms of be careful what you wish for, in a way, if we're thinking about benching Son as an overall thing, because as Stellini said, this is one of the guys in the squad who we know 100% can make the difference. And I know he hasn't been doing it this season. I agree with that, but we know what Sonny can bring. And if I'm just imagining a situation where we bench Son, you know, Richarlison or Danjuma have missed a few chances, and we bring on Son to save a game where we're like 1-0 down and he's just not able to do it. You know, and I'm just worried about that kind of situation. But I'm thinking of the game on Sunday. I think Reece James, we know Azpilicueta is going to be out because he got concussion. So we know Reece James is pretty much going to start on Sunday. He's a player who struggled with fitness. He's a player who Chelsea managers have struggled to get 90 minutes out of this player, out of Reece James, either for injury or because of stamina issues. Tuchel always complained about his lack of stamina. And if that is the case, and we're thinking if Azpilicueta's out and he's probably going to be forced to play 90 minutes, I think that's even more prime to get Son off the bench, because if he's struggling with his stamina, Reece James. Imagine Son coming on after an hour when James is struggling a bit, and he can have a good run at him. And I think that could be a very, very good situation for us.
It kind of feels that any player we bring in those positions, whether it be a backup forward, a backup left winger, even a backup right winger now with Kulusevski in the frame, it feels like all these players are just set up to fail because we can't take any of these players out of the team. Whatever manager it is, they're always going to play Son, they're always going to play Kane, and obviously Kulusevski has emerged himself as well as maybe one of those players too. But what has the actual problem been with Heung-Min Son this season? I've heard people saying maybe it's Perisic occupying those spaces tactically. Maybe we're not getting the best out of Son anymore as he's progressed as a player. Or is it just simply that he's just not on form at the moment? Josh, what are you thinking?
I think it's quite clear. Like Conte, at the start when he first came in, started trying to play Son like, he was talking about his two number 10s. Like he was having Lucas Moura and Son behind Kane and the wing backs wide or whatever. Yeah. I don't claim to be a tactical genius or anything, but I think this bit is quite obvious.
Give yourself some credit, mate. Come on.
But I think this bit is quite obvious, which is like, basically he was doing that, and Son. Remember, people were complaining about Son's performances when Conte first came in. He was still scoring, but they were complaining about his performances. Yeah. Now, his performances got amazing, and he went on that amazing scoring run when Conte started to just say, just hang on the last man and just let Kane find you, innit? Just like Mourinho did before. Can you guys hear me, or am I cutting out? Yeah. So it's cutting out on my side a bit. But yeah, so when he was told to just hang on the last man, and Ryan Sessegnon would start coming in field a little bit more, or Matt Doherty, and Son wasn't asked to do all this build-up and come in and be like a number 10 sometimes and stuff like that. He was just told to just stay on the last man and make runs all day long. That's when he was killing it. And then as soon as we've come to this season now, Conte's reverted back to what he originally was doing, was he was getting Son to do all this build-up play. He's never been a build-up player. Do you know what I mean? He's not someone that he doesn't have the greatest. He has a good touch when it comes to like turning and finishing, but he's not a great passer. He's not he's not very press resistant. He's not very strong. He can't muscle anyone off. So he can't do any of this like come in midfield and help out stuff. So I think that's what it is. I'm not blaming it on Conte, but like Son can't do what Conte needs him to do in this system. I honestly don't believe that, innit? So, but yeah, apart from that, I think it's worth mentioning that I've heard quite a few Chelsea fans say that Richarlison's guaranteed to score his first Premier League goal against them. So that's another reason that I definitely benched Son, because he was going to go to them, wasn't he?
I was actually drilling into. I was looking because I was doing a video, but which will be out maybe today or tomorrow, about Son, like a short. And I was drilling into some of the stats of comparing Son this season to his past few seasons, like his expected goals per 90, shots per 90, all this kind of stuff. And it's very interesting because the last season and the season before last, he outscored his XG by 7 goals. So he's ridiculous. Like his finishing is ridiculous. Like he's scoring from like impossible angles. And this season, he's actually got 5 XG and 5 goals. So is it a case of maybe his and if you look at shots per 90, like this season, it's 1.34. That season under Mourinho, when him and Kane had mad link up and he scored 17 Premier League goals, it was only 1.01. So he's actually having more shots on target per 90 this season than he was that season under Mourinho, and it's quite similar to last season as well. So I don't know what you can learn from these stats. Is it a case of maybe his finishing isn't as ridiculous as it used to be, or like? Because in terms of like the quality of chances, he seems to be getting a similar quality of chances he always has been.
It's the quality of finishing, Tim.
Yeah,
it's the quality.
Is it just confidence? Maybe it's a form and confidence thing then.
It's confidence.
I'll tell you why I disagree with that, because I know the stats are matching up, but like what I think is happening is like Son is then closer to the build-up play when we're like he's closer to the goal basically. We're like, against teams that are sitting back and stuff like that, we're higher up the pitch. We are like kind of trying to play through them. So Sonny's getting silly shots, like shots He's getting lots of shots on the edge of the box, lots of shots that aren't as high class opportunities as like when he's running through on goal. So like how many times can you remember in the past 10 games Son running through on goal like he used to once or twice a match? Like obviously
Hardly
the
ever,
last
to be
game,
honest.
West Ham, but not many. And that he used to do that once or twice a match under Mourinho. We'd always have a break where he is running through on goal, and that is his bread and
But
butter
do
finish.
you know what, Josh? People forget this. Yeah. What about last season? He was still managed under Conte last season, and he had his highest scoring season ever for us last season under Conte. So the one thing that I don't agree with when people say, I've heard people use the argument Perisic as a massive flaw in the way Son plays, but I honestly don't think it is. I just think it's partly the way that that he's been told what he needs to do, and I think it's the defensive liabilities that we have in the team. And what you see, I've seen quite a few heat maps this season of where Son's position has been in a lot of games, and if you see him, he's actually a lot deeper than where he should normally be, right? He's playing a lot deeper. So what that tells me is that he's having to track back a lot more and do a lot more defensive work, and he's not in that position like he was last season, where he was running in behind on the break and literally obliterating defenders who like in front of him. Because we know Son's not like the most amazing dribbler, but he's just got raw pace and he can just burst past people when he's on the break. And I think we haven't seen that a lot this season. And I think like the one time where we kind of saw it was against Man City, right? But if you look at the heat maps and you looked at what he was doing in that game, it was like he was an attacking midfielder. It was like he was playing central, and every single time he got the ball from deep line position, central midfield, and he was just driving with the ball every single time. And I think that's been the difference, I think, with the way that the tactics have been maybe this season. But I also think it's also partly his confidence as well, because if he is none of us can sit here and say we know if Conte is telling him to come back more. Maybe it's a thing that he wants the whole team to do when they're defending. Get the wingers to come back more, help the wing backs more, because we know. Look, let's be honest. Our defense is one of the worst in the league, right? So we have to account for that as well. So I think what it is, I think last season they were a lot more disciplined and organized with the defense, and I think you could give them a little bit more trust, right? And I think that's allowed them to kind of play like Son allowed to play his game a bit more. So I think it's a bit of everything why Son, for me, why he's having this off season. I think you could probably put it down to a bit of tactics. You could probably put it down to how bad our defense have been this season, and him having to come back more and track back more. And on top of that, you probably could say that because he hasn't been getting the goals, he doesn't have the belief in himself to feel that he can achieve those levels that he achieved last season. And you can see it in his game. His touch has been awful all season. His finishing, and you're talking about his shots on target. What I've noticed this season, his shots have been really poor shots on target. Like they've been really. He's like, I think Josh said it. He's had chances, right? He just hasn't been putting them in the net. And I think that is down to confidence. He just doesn't have that clinical edge that you see and you expect from Son. Because if you take out this season's stats, right, going back 5 seasons, right, from last season, Son is the third most or second most clinical finisher in Europe, right? So I think Haaland and Mbappe are the only ones who are more clinical than him, right? Yeah. And they're obviously two like superstar talents. So when you're comparing Son to those players in terms of clinical finishing, right? You can obviously see there's something not right with him, and I think it's a bit of everything for me, anyway.
Danny, just to touch on your point about Son maybe doing more tracking back in defense and like defensively and stuff. I was also looking at like some of his defensive stats like this season compared to previous seasons, and what interestingly stood out to me is that last season he actually does usually do quite a lot of defensive work. He usually does like in terms of tackles plus interceptions, he usually like 1.5 per 90. Right. Last season was the only season in the last like 6 seasons where he did under one action per 90.
Yeah.
So he was doing far less defensive work last season.
And
than
he had his highest scoring season
than he has been in any of his previous seasons, and including this season as well. He's doing a lot more this season as well. So it looks as like his defensive work has gone up, and maybe that's hurting his game a bit potentially. So there's a few things that's happened. His defensive work is going up, and his ridiculous finishing isn't as ridiculous as it used to be, basically.
Well, yeah, you can clearly see it. Like, you can clearly see, like, this season we're like the 5th or 4th worst defensive team in the Premier League in terms of goals conceded. We're terrible. We're so bad defensively, and you wonder why. When you're playing like the top teams, if you watch them, like, a lot of the times we're trying to defend with like a lot of people behind the ball, or sometimes if we're not defending as a team and we're not solid, right, we send one or two of the defenders or one of the midfielders tends to press, right, and they go up and they get caught out on the press and they don't track back, and then that's when we get exposed, and that's how we concede a lot of goals this season. So it's definitely got to be something to do with it as well, because under Conte last season we were pretty good defensively. Like, well, I'm not saying we were amazing, but we didn't concede a lot of goals, and we were one of the, I think since he came in we conceded one of the least amount of goals. I think it was like 3rd or 4th in the stats table or something like that. So you can definitely see the correlation between the two. You can definitely see it.
But when
on the Perisic argument that we were talking about before, there's a stat here brought up by Will Stewart a couple of days ago on Twitter. I don't know if you saw it, but he said Heung-Min Son has scored 0 goals in 1,863 minutes with Perisic on the pitch at left wing back. He scored 7 goals while Perisic has been on the bench, and he scored 2 goals while Perisic has been deployed as a striker. Are those stats telling for you, or is there nothing in that? We'll start with you, Josh.
Well, all you have to do is look at, the Leicester game, when I think it was either 1-1 or we were 1-0 up. The game that we lost 4-1.
Oh, is he gone? Oh, he was just getting into his stride. Have we all gone?
No, I can hear you.
No, you can hear us. Yeah, he's back.
He's
back.
Sorry.
Yeah, go on, Josh. You're just getting into your stride.
Yeah. That point where we had that break, went into Harry Kane, and he turned and played that beautiful ball into Perisic. Or it might have been 0-0. I can't remember, to be honest.
I think it was 1-0 Spurs at the point, yeah.
1-0 Spurs, exactly. And you're thinking we're going to go on now. Perisic runs up. That is where Son is usually. Do you know what I mean? Like, Son, in seasons gone by, the only person to receive that pass would be Son. Do you know what I mean? He would run through on goal and he would score that in his sleep. He scores those for fun. Even this without, we say his confidence is a little bit less this season. I still think if you give him 1 or 2 of those a game, he's going to score 1. Do you know what I mean? Every game. So yeah, I think it probably does have something. I think there's a number of different things that Danny keeps saying as well. There's a load of different things, but I think also Perisic making the same runs could be an issue as well.
Yeah, and I think if you think back to last season, who Son was playing with left wing back, obviously we were rotating between Sessegnon and Reguilon, 2 fairly defensive options, and maybe Son didn't feel the need to offer them as much defensive protection as he has to offer someone like Perisic, and maybe that's also part of the issue. But they don't. But one thing for sure, they don't really seem to be linking up in the forward areas, do they, Son and Perisic at the moment anyway? And maybe that's maybe there is something to that. Maybe they have to learn each other's game. But yeah, I think Perisic. Obviously, Perisic is interesting when we look at Perisic on the left and maybe say Emerson on the right, because I don't know. Obviously, it's been a tactical tweak for Emerson to start coming inside and playing a bit more centrally. But Perisic is never going to do that. He's always going to stay very wide. But what Emerson is doing is creating that space a bit wider for Kulusevski to play in and give him a bit more space in those wide areas. So could Son help with that? But then people argue Son is strongest when he's in the central areas. So I don't know if that is the problem or not.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Sonny needs to get back to what he was at last season, really just tugging that last line of defence and really trying to get in behind and be as central as possible. And that will give us areas out wide for Perisic to get good deliveries in the box and what have you. I think that's the way to go, to be honest. But look, I think... let's move on now, because we've still got some other topics to get through. Next up, we're going to be talking about Ollie Skip and Pape Matar, to be fair. Obviously, when Bentancur got that horrible injury at Leicester, we all feared the worst for our season, feared the worst for our midfield. Since that, though, Sarr and Skip have both stepped up. Did we forget about Ollie Skip? Because When he first made his name for himself in the Spurs midfield under Nuno in the early stages of Antonio Conte, he was one of our better players, if not our best player. And he's showing that kind of form now in the last couple of games. So are we still worried about the midfield moving on from now until the end of the season, or are we happy now with the emergence of Skip and Sarr? We'll start with you, Danny.
Look, I wouldn't say we're happy with the emergence. I mean, look, you could say to an extent you're happy with it because, look, at the end of the day, that's all we've got, right? So we have to kind of be happy with it if they are gonna. Let's not get over the top and over our heads and say they've been very good. They've done their jobs for considering their ages, considering their situations, and all this kind of stuff. I think they're doing okay. I think they're doing all right. I haven't seen a performance where from any of them where I've been like, wow, that's unbelievable. Like, what a performance. I've seen good performances. I saw it against, saw some of the stuff that they did against AC Milan and they against AC. I know AC Milan have not been great this season. They've been pretty poor, to be honest with you, but they held their own in that game. And I think with these two, you just got to hope that they can kind of show this consistency and try and keep improving on what they're doing, because we have to rely on them at the moment now. We haven't got a choice. We haven't got Bentancur now. So if those two don't perform, or if either one of them don't perform, then we're in deep shit, really, to be honest with you. I think we're in a lot of problems. We haven't got Basuma still. So they are the only options we have. We've got Harvey White on loan, so we can't even use a youngster within our squad. And I think Alfie Devine is not ready for this kind of level of football just yet. So
don't tell that to Daigle.
Yeah, I know. Trust me. But look, I like the fact that they've played well in the last couple of games, and they're showing that we can rely on them. I think that's the best thing that I've seen from them. But I haven't seen anything that's going to be like, oh wow, these guys can really, really do an amazing job for us. But look, we've done all right considering the position we're in. Bentancur has been our best midfielder by far this season, I think. It definitely gives, maybe you could say, maybe gives you a different type of stability in the midfield of Skip, the way he's playing at the moment. I think he's a bit more defensive than someone like Bentancur, but obviously we don't have that player who can like just go past the player that easily, like say Bentancur can do. Yeah, and look, I wouldn't say we forgot about Skippy. I would say that he's just had a bad season. He's had an injury as well, and he hasn't got into the flow of where he was when he started coming in under Nuno and under Conte when he first came in. Because he was actually quite, up until we got Bentancur, he was relied on quite a lot. But he did all right. I haven't seen a performance yet from Skip to make me think like, wow, that this guy could be a absolute top player. I've seen good performances. I do think though the Spurs fan base do tend to overhype a lot of these youngsters, and it's the one thing I don't like, because we need to give these type of youngsters a bit of time to just let them play their game. Because what happens is you'll get them and they won't ever reach the potential the fans think that or the whatever the media portrayed as what they could be, and then we're like, oh, they're just shit now. They're just shit. They're rubbish, and it's like it's not fair on them. You got to give them a chance. I'm not saying they're going to be top class midfielders, right? But out of the two, in terms of Sarr and Skip, I see a lot more potential in someone like Sarr. I think he's younger as well, and you can see the kid's got a lot of talent. Like you can see he's got potential, top class talent, but we need to just let him play his game, let him develop the right way. Don't expect too much of him, because I think that's going to really hinder his progression if he wants to kind of like stay in this team. And I think you're going to see a lot of rotation towards the last bit of the season between them two, until you get Basuma back maybe, and you might see Basuma come in a bit. But if they're doing really well, you might not see Basuma, because it seems to be that Conte does like Sarr and Skip a lot in terms of the way he suits his system. So yeah, look, they're doing their job so far, and I hope it continues. Yeah, that's all. I can't really say much more on it, to be honest.
The reason I say did we forget about Skippy is because only a month ago I mean, I was having conversations with Sim. I think we had a few conversations on the WhatsApp group as well about, should we just let Skip go on loan? Should we aid his development a little bit more? And maybe we forgot about how influential maybe he was in that Nuno era and the early stages of that Conte era, because he was literally one of our best players, if not our best player in the Nuno era anyway. So Josh, what are you feeling about Skippy? And not only that as well, it's just like every manager seems to love him. Mourinho said he's going to be a future captain. Conte seems to love him as well. Poch was the one to bring him through and I think he was the one to send him out on loan, or maybe it was
Gave him his
Jose,
debut,
gave him his debut. So every manager seems to love him. So what are you thinking, Josh?
If I'm honest, I did forget about Skip because he had that injury. I didn't totally forget about him, but I just, if you're making your list of depth when it comes to midfielders and stuff, he was at the bottom for me, to be honest. I did forget that, Conte was talking about him being such an important player. Do you remember when he first came in, and he did so well before Bentancur came in? We had a nice run where it was Højbjerg and Skip, and we were winning games. We didn't, we went on a 10 unbeaten game run when Conte came in, and Skip was pivotal to that. And I seen him recently. To be honest, I just thought, when someone starts getting so many injuries, you think, are they ever actually gonna amount to anything or even be the same player they were? Like, kind of similar to how Winks has been, because when he first burst on the scene, he was pretty good, and then he started getting those injuries, and now he's kind of useless. I did forget about Skip, but now that he's back, how can I say this? Like, without being disrespectful to Højbjerg, I have no problem with Højbjerg. I like Højbjerg, I do, but I would have rathered it be Højbjerg that was out, so that Bentancur could play with someone like a Skip or something like that. Because I think Højbjerg, Skip, and Sarr are just so samey. Do you know what I mean? They all do the same thing.
Yeah.
It looks like it's.
They all do the same job, Josh.
You're back.
You're with us.
Yeah, he's back.
Yeah, sorry, it just keeps cutting out. I'm not sure what's going on, but so they all do the same thing. But Bentancur, I really feel, adds like that flair, and he does. He's a better dribbler than any of them, I reckon. Maybe Sarr. I don't know. I need to see more of Sarr or something, but he can definitely draw players in. And he's got more strings to his bow, Bentancur, whereas Højbjerg is very one-dimensional to me. I know he made that great pass the other day. I feel like that's something that is quite rehearsed, like it's a rehearsed automation that they do in training and stuff like that. But I would have liked to... Skip he's been brilliant since he's come back in. I'm not worried about our midfield on Sunday or Saturday, whenever it is we play Chelsea. I'm more worried about our defence. And you'd think if it was like, you've got two youngsters coming in to play in midfield, you'd be more worried about that position, wouldn't you? But if it was going to happen to us anywhere where our best player was going to go, probably Bentancur was the best thing for it to have happened. Do you know what I mean? The best place.
Do you think that Skippy keeps his place for Sunday, or would you like to see Pape Matar Sarr given a go?
So hard, man. I think Skip, because he properly dominated Rice, man. And Rice is better than anything that their midfield is serving up on Sunday. I'll tell you that now. So I think Skip also, he's like, he's a Spurs boy. It's a London derby. Do you know what I mean? I still think Sarr has a higher ceiling, probably, but I'd just go with Skip for this game.
It just reminds me of the North London derby under Nuno at the Emirates, where Skip started on the bench after that brilliant run of form he was on. And I remember sitting there with Sim in the stadium in the Emirates, and when Skip came on, he was the best player on the park. Literally the best player on the park. He came on, was putting in challenges, driving us forward. And I was thinking, like, if Skip started that game, like, it could have been a different scoreline, could have been a different outcome. Obviously, we got battered that day. And, like, if he comes in at such a young age and performs like that in a North London derby, it fills me with confidence for him to come in this against this Chelsea side to have a good performance. But Sim, what are you thinking about the situation with Skippy?
Yeah, I think we all, like, collectively, when you're, I think Skip was down the pecking order. Like for a while, when Sarr started at North London derby, that really showed how far down the pecking order Skip had been due to his injuries, and he'd been out for so long. After we all remember how good he was at Norwich, and then coming through it, and then coming to Spurs, everyone was so excited about him, and he got those nasty injuries that we kept hearing he was going to be out for a week, and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it ended up being a whole year almost. Pretty much he was out. And then when he came back, he didn't really perform that well in a number of games. He wasn't really himself, and it kind of got the feeling like if Sarr's here now, we signed Basuma in the summer, Bentancur and Højbjerg are both playing well. It was like, should we loan Skip out? What's the best for his development? But unfortunately for Spurs, but fortunately for Skip, that we have had 2 long-term injuries, and he's really taken this chance now. It's like a second chance to prove himself, and I think we all forgot how excited we were about him last season, and when he was playing week in, week out, because this guy has a lot of quality. He's so mature for his age. He plays like a player in his late 20s, not in his early 20s, or even in his 30s. Like, he's got amazing positional awareness. His defensively, he almost like, there's how many times does Skip, like someone's taking him on in a challenge and you think he's beaten, and he'll somehow just wrap a sliding tackle around them and somehow win the ball, and it's like, wow, that you're shocked that he's been able to win a challenge in that way. I thought that after the Milan game, everyone was waxing lyrical about Sarr, and fair enough, because Sarr was brilliant. But I think Skip's performance went under the radar 100%. As to how good he was. And then when you're picking a team for Sunday, people forget that how much experience Skip has compared to Sarr in terms of playing Premier League football. Knows his teammates a lot more as well. And I think Sarr, we even picked Sarr up at 11s, but I think it went under the radar how much of an obvious choice probably Skip was for that game, especially it being a derby. And I think it being a derby again on Sunday, I think you have to, and considering how well he played, I think Skip has to keep his place. But I think it's time to get excited about Skip again, in my opinion. And I actually think as well, like I remember we said last season when he was going through that good spell, if he keeps this run of form up for a long period of time, he could have his eyes on that World Cup spot. And obviously he got injured and it never happened. But thinking about it now, Calvin Phillips had a bad injury going into that World Cup and stuff. And I do think if he didn't have that injury, Skip, that there could have been a space for him there. And I don't think he should give up any sort of ambitions, because I do think he could be a future England international. I really believe he's of that quality.
All right.
Look, can I just add to that?
Yeah, of course you can.
Because with Skip, look, it's like I just said before. It's like, I think we need to kind of calm down on these midfielders like Skip and Sarr. I don't think they were like really brilliant in the games they played recently. They've done their job. It's like that's what they're paid to do. They're highly paid professional athletes, right? They've done what they're expected to do. And this is the thing, like they're not like midfielders who are going to come in like a Bentancur or I mean, I wouldn't even class Bentancur to me is not a world-class player. He's a very good player, very talented player, but he's not a world-class player. A world-class player is someone like Kevin De Bruyne or like Rodri
Kane,
Harry Kane, those type of players. They're like the top 5 or 10 in their positions in the world. But with Skip, I think that what I've seen of him, I think he's someone who could be a good squad player. I'm just not sure if Skip's ever going to be that player we all want him to be or we all expect him to be. I just don't think he's talented enough. And like Josh was saying, I think if there's anyone out of the two who's going to make it in as a long-term Spurs player, I think Sarr would be the one of the two who would make it, because I think he offers more than he can do what Skip can do, but he can also do more. And I think you can see with Sarr, he's a lot more raw. He's very raw. Like Skip is he reminds me of Harry Winks when Harry Winks was coming in. Like he does everything like doesn't do too many crazy things. He doesn't do too many outrageous. He does his job. He ticks the ball right. It's not like he's really bad, but he's not like he's really good either. He's just all right. That's how I see him. And I think with someone like Sarr, I think you definitely see there's a lot more potential quality in there, and you can see the way he kind of how he controls the ball, how he can take on players, how strong he is for someone of his physique. He's actually pretty quick as well, considering is. So I think someone like him, I think personally, I'd like to see Sarr given a bit more of a chance because I think there's a lot more potential in him. But look, in terms of the Chelsea game, I think you probably will go with Skip purely because he's had a good game against West Ham. You want to keep him in that momentum, that kind of the mood that he's in at the moment. It is another London derby. He just played in one, and he did really well in that game. But again, it's one game, and we got to keep our feet on the ground and not get over the top just over 1 or 2 games that we see them play better than they normally do.
It's interesting what you said before about maybe Spurs fans overhyping the academy products year on, year out. And the only one that maybe we didn't overhype was Harry Kane. And he's the one that's gone on to be an elite world-class player. I mean, I remember when he was breaking through and he was scoring all those goals, we kind of overhyped him more in jest than anything else, like with the Jesus memes and all that kind of, he was stumbling around players. Nobody could tell that he was going to go on and be what he's become.
Nobody.
Like, the players that we've overhyped, I remember Japhet Tanganga after that debut. I mean, we all said he's going to be the next best thing since sliced bread. Harry Winks, Ryan Mason, even to a certain degree. Ollie Skip. I mean, there's been loads.
Ryan Mason. You're on that one. I was never on that train. I'm never on the Ryan Mason.
Lewis Holtby was going to be good.
Lewis Holtby. He wasn't an academy product, but we definitely overhyped Holtby.
You know, in the early days of Winks, I saw elements of Scott Parker in Harry Winks. I saw elements of. I saw that he could be that player who could really. I never saw the strength that Scott Parker was a small player as well, but he had a lot of strength. Like, he was quite an aggressive player. Yeah. I didn't see the aggression in Harry Winks, but I saw the kind of ability that I thought that like Scott Parker had, and I thought he could actually be something in our midfield. I'm not saying he's going to be a top player, but he could do a job for us, like in a squad. But I do think with Harry Winks that he just, since that massive injury he had, I think it just went downhill. He had that. Obviously, everyone will remember the Bernabeu night. That's his best performance in the Spurs shirt, bar none. But I think he never lived up to the hype that the Spurs fans gave him. And this is the thing that I say about we need to stop kind of putting so much hype and pressure on these youngsters, because if they don't make it, we're gonna be the ones saying, "Oh, look, our academy is shit. This and that is shit." But we don't help the problem if we keep putting so much pressure on these youngsters. Just let them let them develop. Like you said, Harry Kane. No one expected Harry Kane to be the player that he is now, our top goal scorer of the club. I mean, that's insane. So, yeah, this is why I want to say just keep grounded with these youngsters and just let the club help try progress them and see what happens.
And there you have it. It only took Danny Kyriakou 50 minutes to blame the fans, and they. But let's move on. Let's talk about Clement Lenglet now, because obviously we've got big problems in defence. On a loan. Do we want to sign him on a permanent? Has he shown us enough that he should be here to stay as one of the main back three? We'll start with you, Josh. Are you a fan of Lenglet?
I think he's awful, honestly. Like, I honestly think that this guy is just like, I don't know how he's a centre-back. He's so passive. He can barely win a duel. Like, you know, I honestly think it was just... This is the one thing that where, like, you know, me and Danny sometimes clash in the WhatsApp group or whatever, but, like, this is a proper, like, Levy signing. Do you know what I mean? Like, is a like, oh, we couldn't get Bastoni in, let's get this geezer on loan. Do you know what I mean? I know a lot of people say, oh, he's been all right, he's been competent or whatever, but when you think about it, defenders are meant to defend. Not only does he make the same mistakes and probably more of them than Ben Davies does, but he can get muscled off the ball by little players like Saka. Do you know what I mean? Like he doesn't seem to have any physical presence about him, and you're meant to be a centre-back. I know he can play a pass forwards, but first of all, you're meant to be a centre-back. So at the end of the day, I just that doesn't bother me. I'd rather like my defenders be okay on the ball and monsters in the tackle, monsters in. Do you know what I mean? First, I'd rather them be both, but if they can only be one, then they need to be a physical presence. And I just think when I saw that report, I know it wasn't a good, it wasn't really a reliable outlet or whatever. But when I saw that report that we might be keeping him, God, no, I really hope not. I think, in fact, I would go as far as to say, I know this is a bit over the top, but and I know Conte won't be thinking like this, but I'd look to our academy instead of Lenglet. I'd say who's
Really?
the best centre back in our academy and give them a spot. This geezer's not.
Give Charlie Sayers a go. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Did you see that picture of the small? Well, it was meant to be a small child holding Kulu's hand on the way into the match. Yeah, give him a shot at centre back. He's like 11, but he's like 6 foot.
But Josh, do you prefer him out on the left or in the middle of the back three?
In the middle, he has less. He's exposed less, so it's because he has someone either side of him to deal with the first duel, and he is probably one of the best passers, to be honest.
Yeah.
Although I do think Romero, just because he's so good in other aspects, people will then go and say, "Oh, but Lenglet's a great passer." But I think Romero's a better passer than Lenglet as well. Do you know what I mean? I think he's better at everything. And so yeah, if you have to play him, I'd probably play him in the centre. But also, I don't know what his stats are in aerial duels or whatever, but to me, he doesn't give me confidence in the air. And at least Dyer can win a header. Do you know what I mean? So I'd still have Dyer over him in the middle.
And you would have Davis over him on the left, I'm guessing.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, David Harris has been banging the Lenglet drum for the past 24 hours. I was on his show last night. He was doing it again. But Danny, what are you saying about Lenglet?
Yeah, Lenglet's not good enough for this club. He's just not. I think with Lenglet, it's Lenglet is again another one of those stopgap signings. They couldn't get the players they wanted, or they didn't try hard enough to get the players they wanted. And they just got someone who was kind of available. They could get on a cheap until they could get who they want. And that to me is like it's not the mentality of a big club. If you're a big club, you go and get the player you want. Doesn't matter the price. Go and get the player you need. We've had this problem since Jan Vertonghen. Since 2018, we've had this problem, and we still haven't fixed it. So that's like over how many years is that now? That's ridiculous. We're in 2023
We've had problems
now.
for a lot longer than that, Danny. What year did we sell Kyle Walker in?
Yeah, this is what I'm saying, Ben. But it's the way that the club is run, right? I'm not going to get into that, but like you bring in, if you're going to bring in a player to help you, like Lenglet, I get it's like a number. It's like just to make the numbers, isn't it? Like and hope that. It's another one of those players where you just hope that he's going to be good for the return that you've paid for him or the loan deal you've got for him. And if he doesn't work out, he's gone in the summer. And if he does work out, you might end up buying him for a cheap fee. Which it's just like such bad football business. If you're looking at players who are, Lenglet prior to coming to Spurs, 2 years prior to that, he's been in bad form. He's had bad injury issues. He's had bad form. He was one of the top-rated youngsters in the world when Barcelona purchased him. And for like 1 or 2 years, he was very good.
Yeah.
The last 2 years prior to the move to Tottenham, he's been poor. So, and I think with this season at Spurs, I think what Josh is right. He seems to make more mistakes than Davis, but the only thing you could say is he's better on the ball than Davis. But if I'm honest, I'd probably prefer Davis. I mean, this is how bad it's got. We're having to choose between Lenglet and Davis as our left centre backs, and it's quite terrible, to be honest with you. And
do you prefer Davis, Danny?
I prefer Davis and Lenglet. I do, yeah. I do prefer Davis and Lenglet. I think I feel more confident with Davis than Lenglet. But Lenglet is not too bad. Actually, no, I'm not going to say that because he is too bad. I remember how bad he was against Man City. Yeah, I was going to say Lenglet was he's better as a central centre back, but I think he's just as bad, to be honest with you. I think he, like Josh said, he's very, very weak. He gets pushed off the ball a lot more easily than Davis does. I just think he's just there for a number. How many times have you seen him this season start and he's been hauled off the pitch in the second half? Conte's done it quite a number of times when he has chosen to start him. And yeah, I don't want to sign him at all. I think it's a waste of a signing if we sign him. I think if we sign him, to me, that shows the exact ambition of the club, and fans need to wake up and see it, in my opinion. Because if fans are happy with someone like Clement Lenglet and Davis as your options as your left centre backs, then we don't deserve to be ambitious at this club, and we don't deserve to challenge for things because you can't challenge for trophies when you got those two as your players. I mean, in all honesty, we need both of them gone. But look, this is Tottenham we're talking about, and this is Daniel Levy. So if you're going to get rid of one of them, you get rid of Lenglet, and you just get a better player to rotate with Davis for the time being until we can get Davis out of the club. But for me, Lenglet, I would never sign him on a permanent deal. He's just not good enough anymore. He just really isn't. Not for what we want to do. I mean,
I completely agree. I don't think he's good enough. I don't think he has been good enough since he joined us. I've always had the reservations since his debut, to be honest. And he just doesn't fill you with any sort of confidence going the other way. And to be fair to him, like he's got 2 assists this season, and he got that goal in Marseille. So he has stepped up in somewhat in big moments going forward. But your first job as a defender is to defend, and he just can't do that, especially in the Premier League. What are you thinking, Tim?
I think that I don't think he's been a total disaster, but what I would say is
average though.
I think he's average. I think he was that, and that was the fear when we signed him. Like, I think that obviously he had a very good time at Sevilla, which convinced Barcelona to part with a lot of money to sign him, and he's gone to Barcelona and he's been pretty average in the past couple of years, although he made a decent start to life at Barca. And we were hoping we could sign him and get him back to those levels at Sevilla and his early days at Barca, and he can surprise a few people. But unfortunately, apart from he made a decent start to his Spurs career, but apart from that, he's kind of been what we expected, which is a very average left-sided defender who has a mistake in him and is not very physical. I actually think when it comes to Champions League games, I think he has been a lot better in the Champions League games when the games are more technical, and maybe he doesn't have to use his physicality as much, and the game is much more about positional and his quality on the ball. And I actually think in Champions League he's been pretty good. But in the Premier League, especially in physical games, where I remember that I think it really clicked for me when we played Newcastle at home, and that moment Almiron just breezed past him, and I think from that moment I'm like, okay, maybe this guy ain't the answer. After that moment, and I think since then, I think that moment's really affected him because I think he was actually pretty decent up until that game, and then since that game he's made a series of mistakes, and I think he's been bullied quite a bit, and I think that. If we're looking for and also one thing I think Ben Davies has over him is Davies is a lot more comfortable in the wide areas, I think, than Lenglet. Lenglet, when he gets forward and can swing and across, he looks okay. But when it comes to defending in wide areas, you worry about him. Whenever like an Almiron or a Saka, whenever he has to engage with one of these defenders, it feels like he gets very easily beaten in those wide areas when he has to use his pace and recovery tackle and stuff like that. I do worry about him in those kind of areas as well. He doesn't do what Romero does when it comes to like anticipating tackles and strong crunching tackles, which he feels like he can win early. He doesn't do that either. What he is he's a silky, elegant kind of defender who likes the ball to feet, and he'll try and nick an interception, and he'll try and pinch the ball off you without really engaging you physically. But if he does engage you physically, you've got a very good chance of beating him. And aerially, for sure, I think Josh pointed out, aerially he's terrible. He gets beaten in the air very, very easily, and that is a big worry when you're trying to defend set pieces and things like that. So I think for me, he's just not going to look. If we want our defense to go to the next level, he's not going to do that. I don't think our defense is much worse with him in it than it was before. But although the stats maybe argue otherwise, but for sure you're not going up. You're not increasing our level with Lenglet there. And if we're looking to move on with our backline and improve our defense and have a more physical backline, he just isn't the answer.
And I feel like the only games he's good at is games where we're asked to dominate the ball. You know, away to Preston, I thought he played well. Away to Marseille, I thought he played well. At home, away to Bournemouth as well, when he played in the middle of the back three, I thought he played well that game.
He played all right that game, yeah.
It's only games where we've asked to dominate the ball against teams of maybe considerably lower quality, where he actually stands up for the team, and I think that tells you everything you need to know. And when we come up against teams where they put it on us, he's always found wanting, in my opinion, and defensively nowhere near good enough. But yeah, I think that's a general consensus of Lenglet that we don't want to keep him. But the last topic of the day is: do you guys want Pochettino if Conte was to leave at the end of the season? I know you guys have a lot to say on this topic, so we'll start with you, Josh. Do you want him back?
I feel like this is 8 Mile when I'm going first. Do you know what I mean? Like, Danny Kiriakou.
You only get one shot, one opportunity.
It's complicated. I want Conte to stay, definitely. But also, I want a manager that not like, who's really, really that proud of Spurs unless you're a Spurs fan. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not under any illusions that like all these great managers are going to come.
Tuchel's a Spurs fan.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so with Conte, I just feel like he's just getting more and more distant. It's nothing to do with his illness or anything like that. I just feel like he never really felt like Spurs was quite his home. He talks about the club. He doesn't talk about us. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's quite clear, if I'm real with myself, that he is going at the end of the season. Yeah. So, yeah, the question is if Conte leaves. So, yes, I'd say yes, because there aren't that many managers that can come in and straight away have goodwill with the fans. That's a rarity in football. Everyone's got an opinion usually when it comes to managers. Whereas I think 90% of the fan base would be okay. At least they wouldn't be toxic towards him. Even the ones that don't want him, they're not going to be toxic towards him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Also, Poch did his best work when we had a proper sporting director. Not Steve Hitchin, who was whatever his title was or whatever, but like when we had Paul Mitchell that actually did scouting, set up scouting networks, had his famed black box, whatever it was called, I can't remember.
The black book,
and started. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
And started doing all those signings that were like really smart signings, like Wanyama, Alderweireld, Son. Like all these. Oh God, I'd love to have that again. By the way,
do you feel like we're getting back there under Paratici? Those kind of signings.
A little bit, yeah. So I do. Well, not a little bit. I think he's done really well. And the only reason I don't want to big him up too much is in case he's gone at the end of the season because he gets nicked or whatever. But yeah, I think Poch would work well under that structure. But also it's like, would he want to come in and work under that? Because I don't know what the whole thing with him and Paul Mitchell was. I don't know if he had a problem with sporting directors and all that sort of stuff, but I'm all for it, as in like if Conte is definitely going, might as well give Poch another chance. But he has to submit to a sporting director way of working. I only want him if he's going to allow a sporting director to be there, whether it's Paratici or that Benfica guy or whatever. But Poch cannot have final say on signings. I think that's where we started to go wrong with Lo Celso and Ndombele and all that sort of stuff. The signings after Paul Mitchell left were a lot of them Poch signings. And I don't think he's got talent ID like that. But as a coach, I think he's brilliant. So yes, the answer is yes. I'll take him.
And a lot of Spurs fans, including myself, complained about keep chopping and changing the philosophies at Spurs, from going from Pochettino to Jose Mourinho to Nuno to Antonio Conte. Do you feel, if we go full circle and bring back Pochettino, that these players that Paratici has brought in can work in that system?
Yes, I do believe so. I know a lot of people are talking about, but he plays a back four, blah, blah, whatever. Poch's best season, we were talking about this in the WhatsApp group earlier. Poch's best season, correct me if I'm wrong, Sim, because, Sim remembers every single game, doesn't
he?
And every lineup.
I'm going to catch you, exactly. No stone unturned, Josh.
It was like a Southampton game or something. We went on a little bit of a bad run, 16-17. At the start, I think we had a few draws, did we? Or something like that?
Yeah.
And it was like a Southampton game in November or something where he switched to 3-4-3. And then that was what the system we used basically for the whole rest of the season. That's how I remember it anyway. So I think he can play a back three. I think Porro and Udoji under Poch, the fullback whisperer. Are you absolutely mental? This geezer had Ben Davis and Kieran Trippier like when they first came in, looking as remember how interchangeable Danny Rose and Walker were. We weren't worried, like we were still winning with them. It didn't matter. Ben Davis looked like a proper wing back under him as well. Like Poch would do fine with them. The midfield there, we've got a younger squad as well. I know we've still got Kane and Son. Those are the only question marks, to be honest. Everywhere behind the front line and Kulu. So Kulu and behind, I think is fine. But Kane and Son, I don't know if they could work under Poch now, to be honest, because I don't think they'll press how he needs them to, or maybe we'd have to just replace one of them with someone that is really physical and stuff. But overall, I think the squad's in good shape for him. Get rid of Perisic, Longley, few of the older heads, and bring in some younger people, and he'd be fine.
When you're looking at Poch and Conte and the systems that they use and the squad that we have, under which manager do you think we need to spend more to get to where we want to be?
Is that to me or Danny?
Whoever wants to take it, we'll go with you. I want to get Danny's full take on it afterwards.
Yeah, sorry, it cut out a little bit, so I didn't get the whole thing. Say that again, sorry.
The whole question is, with the squad that we have, under Antonio Conte or Maurizio Pochettino, who do you think needs to spend more to get to where we want to be?
Conte, definitely. Because I think that Poch could bring in younger defenders that won't cost as much and make a good defense out of them. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that they'd be as great as Conte teams. They're very different managers or whatever, but Poch could work. He's proved that he can work with like players that don't cost as much. He's not really interested in just having proven winners. He does want to develop players, whereas Conte isn't that manager. Fair enough. So I'd say Poch, yeah.
Do you know? Can I just add on that? I think what the problem is, I think what fans forget to realise, right, is the fact that Poch did that at the beginning of his tenure when we didn't have pressure to achieve anything. It was only when he got us to a certain level where he couldn't do the same tactics he used when he started. Poch said it himself. You can go and see the interview. I don't know if you remember this, Tim, but when they asked him a question about why is it that we're not using as many youngsters through the academy anymore, and he said something on the lines of, well, when you get to this point where you're trying to achieve, you're trying to fight for top four, right? Before we could get players who are like a 6 or a 7, right, from the academy, and we could bring them in. But now we need them like an 8 or a 9, and that's the difference, right? Because the difference is when he got to the level he got to, that's when Paul Mitchell fell out with Daniel Levy, because he tried to get the player of the next level, because we were trying to get to the next level, because Poch didn't want to be at that level where the club were at and where they always want to be at, right? They never have that ambition to drive to the next stage. Paul Mitchell himself obviously said, my dream job turned into a nightmare, and he ended up he was on garden leave for over a year nearly, because he just fell out with Daniel Levy, because he just wasn't listening to the way he believed was the right thing to do for the club to progress the club to the next level, right? Yeah. So if you bring back someone like Poch in, right, for me personally, I don't want Poch to come back, because for me, I feel that his whole legacy as a Spurs fan favourite is going to be absolutely tarnished when he fails again. In my opinion, I think he will fail again, because what will happen is Poch going to come back and realise that, is Daniel Levy a changed man? Daniel Levy is not a changed man. He's never going to change. Let's be honest. He is never ever going to change his ways, right?
But so wait a sec, Danny. Wait a sec, Danny. Go
on.
But you say Daniel Levy's not a changed man, but is the club not in a much different space now to when Pochettino was last here? Because we went through transfer windows of not signing anyone. I mean, since Conte has been here, since Paratici has come here, we have spent a lot of money.
Yeah, we have spent money, but why have we not kept that same philosophy and style? It's the constant chopping and changing of direction of footballs, managers. There's no structure and there's no plan for what this club wants to achieve on the football pitch. We had Daniel Levy recently telling us in an interview, he's talking about the hotel that they're going to build. Or why don't you tell us about the 5-year project on the football pitch, or about us winning an FA Cup, or about us trying to challenge for the title? Why can't you tell us in the next 10 years we want to challenge for the title, or we want to win a title? Like Newcastle owners came straight in and they didn't give the fans an unrealistic aim. They said within 10 years we want to win a title. That's a long project. 10 years is a long time in football, right? But they've put out their initial ambition of what they want to do as a football club, right? And they said within 10 years, that is the aim. They want to try and win a title. And that's what they're going to try and build towards, right? We've never had an ownership. We've never had our owners come in and say, right, in 5 years' time, we want to try and compete to win a title, or if we want to try and win an FA Cup within the next 5 years, or something like that. Just try to say something like that. But the problem is the constant changing of these managers. You can see clearly that, for me anyway, someone like Pochettino coming back, I think, in the way I like to put it, is he's going to get his trousers pulled down once again, and he's going to get embarrassed, because what will happen is, if Poch does come in, and you got to remember, right, when Poch came into this club, he had players there already. He had Jan Vertonghen there. He had Eriksen there. He had Harry Kane there. He had Hugo Lloris there. We've now got to replace a goalie. We've got, and we don't know if the goalie, for example, if we go and buy someone like Raya, for example, he could turn out to become Spursy and he somehow has that Spursy curse that our players have, that as soon as a player comes to Tottenham, all of a sudden their mentality just drops. Right?
You can say that about anyone, though, can't you?
Yeah,
you could, but we see that a lot with Spurs, with players when they come to Spurs, right? But what I'm saying is, you're going to then have to replace a goalkeeper. You're going to have the issue with Son and Kane getting older. You're going to have a problem with like one of the best finishers in the world, in world football, in Harry Kane. You're going to have a problem with whether he's going to stay or not. Is he going to? Do you want to build? You're going to try and build a project with Harry Kane in it, or are you going to try and? Does he want to stay at the club and things like that? So he's going to have a lot more stuff to deal with now, I think, than he did when he first came in. So it's a bigger rebuilding job than the first time around, right? Because the problem is,
do you really think so?
Yeah, I'll tell you why, Ben.
I don't agree with that.
Do you not, Danny? Just before, go on, you carry on.
I was going to say, our expectation is different to how it was when Poch first came in. Our expectation now, right, is the fact we've now got a stadium, right? This is 62,500 seat stadium, one of the best in the world. We've got one of the best training facilities in the world, right? We pay the highest season ticket prices in the world, right? So now the expectation is a lot higher for someone to deliver a higher quality of product on the football pitch, right? Which means a better team, right? Now, for him to do that with the philosophy that he has in his football, right? He's going to need. You got to remember, right? When Poch came in, we had the youngest team in the Premier League for nearly 4 years. 4 years.
He built that. Right? He built that. When he first came in, he had a massive clear out.
But what I'm saying, he had a massive clear out, Ben, but he had the core players still at the club. He then added a few more. He had a clear out of all the Deadwood players, right? Like the Bentalebs, like the Ryan Masons,
Kabul, Lennon.
All those types. Yeah, it was the Deadwood that weren't really playing anymore, right? That we still had. Jan Vertonghen was playing. We had Lloris playing. Eriksen was there, right? Then he added Dele Alli to Harry Kane. He added Son to Harry Kane with Paul Mitchell. And then he added Toby Alderweireld and Wanyama, and then it built the squad up. Dembele was already there. So we had the players, half the players were already there. So what I'm saying is, the way that the age of our squad now, with Harry Kane and Son at the age that they're at, they can't play the way that Poch wants to play his football, right? When, for example, when he first came into this club. So why I'm saying I think that it will cost more money for him, right, than it would Conte, because we've been building Conte's squad for the last 18 months and not fully, like, in terms of what everything he wants, but like you were saying, Ben, you're saying that we're seeing slowly they're building the squad. So what happens if you go and change to a Pochettino, who's got a complete different style of football and philosophy, right? And then what you've got to do, you've then got to bring in his players to fit his philosophy and his system and his style, right? And players like Harry Kane can't press from the front anymore, and players like that, you need young legs in you to play the way that he wants to play, right? And that's for me why look. I think I want Conte to stay, and I'm not saying I am enjoying this football. I don't like the football at all. I want Conte to stay for the bigger picture of what the meaning of Conte is if he stays at this football club. That's the reason I want him to stay. Because, yeah, go on,
Danny. If Conte does leave, let's say because family reasons or whatever, who would be your number one choice then? If let's say just he resigned at the end of the season, who would be your number one choice?
look. My number one choice would probably be Gallardo, or you can say, is it Amaron at Sporting, or the other option is De
Ruben
Zerbi.
Almiron.
Yeah, or De
De
Zerbi. I think De Zerbi is you can see what he's done to that Brighton team in that short space of time. For me, I think Potter is a one-dimensional tactical manager, and he can't. He it's like Graham Potter's taken his tactics to Chelsea, implanted it on a team with better players, and they're still struggling to score goals, right? Which is exactly what they did at Brighton. So for me, I never wanted Potter in the first place at Spurs. I don't think he's a good enough manager. But what I've seen of De Zerbi is he's elevated the style of football at Brighton, and you can see it. They're a lot more harder to beat. They're a better team. They're a better unit. And they've had a lot of players come out of that squad, and obviously their recruitment teams at Brighton is brilliant. But I think for me, someone like De Zerbi, I think he could. I'm saying of these managers because I don't believe. Well, I know in my opinion, right, that no manager that's coming into this club is going to get the full backing that they want, right? And that's why I don't want Poch back, because it's going to be the same way that he was managed before. And I think he'd be naive if he came back to Spurs to think that it's going to be different, unless there was a written contractual agreement to say you're going to have the choice of who you want to bring in, or whatever you want. You're going to have X amount of money to spend. Maybe Poch, but to be honest with you, I want to see something different right now. I'd rather see Poch come back when we have different owners.
Where can Poch actually go though? Like after PSG, like I think like you've got to remember, for him, we're a bit of a safety net as well, because he could, if another top club takes a chance on him and he fails again, like he's not going to have the same leeway that he would here at Spurs. Do you know what I mean? So I think, to be honest, it's a bit of a marriage of convenience. Like, do you know what I mean?
Of course
like,
it is, Josh.
Josh, do you not think the way things have gone at Spurs and PSG since he's left, do you not think it looked quite favourably on him, on Poch?
I don't know. I don't know, because it was bad for a year before he left, wasn't it? Spurs.
Yeah.
And if you can't go to PSG with that squad, and did he fail to win the league in the first season? He did.
Yeah,
didn't
he didn't come in. He didn't start the season though, did he? He came in halfway through or 3/4 of the way through or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
There are fans at the moment going to the training ground and protesting Gautier in the squad. They're 1-0 down after losing at home to Bayern Munich in the Champions League, so they could well be out of that. So the new guy Gautier could well be gone by the end of the season. So it's not easy to succeed there.
PSG is a poison chalice. Like Tuchel got sacked there because there was too much involvement from Leonardo. Poch didn't like the involvement from Leonardo. Poch leaves, ultimately Leonardo goes as well. And now Gautier's come into PSG, and Luis Campos is doing the exact same thing. I don't know if you saw from the last weekend, Luis Campos came down from upstairs and he walked past Gautier and started screaming at the players on the pitch. I mean, if that's not undermining someone, then I don't know what is.
Well, this is the point. Like, this is why I think, like, the way that for Poch to work, he needs to have someone like a Mitchell, someone who he trusts and he believes they have the same style of philosophy.
Yeah.
Poch doesn't have the philosophy of him, and Pochettino and Paratici do not have the same philosophy in the type of players they want, the style of football, and the philosophy of their football, right? They're two opposite ends of the spectrum. So if you bring in someone like Poch, do you honestly sit here and believe that someone like Paratici is going to be able to work with him in the right way? I don't.
Let me ask you this, Danny. Let me ask you this.
Because they've got different philosophies.
Which one? Name me over 2 or 3 players that Paratici has signed that won't work in a Poch system.
2 or 3 players.
Perisic is one. Who else?
I need to look at the list of players.
Lenglet.
Lenglet. Yeah, Lenglet.
Lenglet, who won't be here.
Apart from the stopgaps, which was Perisic and Lenglet, were stopgaps coming in, right? Apart from them, in my opinion, everyone would work in a Poch system.
I agree, 100%. Most of them have been young as well. Most of them have been very young, which is what Poch wants. And you were saying, Danny, about how we had certain players here when Poch came in, and you're right. You're completely right. We had Eriksen, we had Vertonghen, all that, Danny Rose, Kyle Walker, whatever. But the thing is, he elevated a lot of those players. Dembele was no one before he. I'm not saying he was no one, but he never reached those levels until Poch came.
Yeah.
Kyle Walker and Danny Rose both reached their top form when Poch came. And I think that there's a lot of players in the squad already that that would be good for him. That most of them are young. Like most of the players that Paratici has signed are young, and they'll run for Poch, I think.
Yeah.
I think Regulon back if Poch comes.
Yes, that's also another question. Like, which
Ndombele.
players out on loan with the 250 million worth of talent out on loan?
I actually think
like,
Ndombele gets another crack if Poch comes back. I actually do.
know,
I
like-
actually do.
He doesn't.
I actually do.
He doesn't seem to.
don't see
And
that.
Lascelles, so I think they both do.
Under manager.
Yeah, but
I mean-
this is the whole problem, Sim. This is what I'm saying. The whole
I knew
problem
that
of bringing.
Will
of bringing
Ndombele be
of
able
bringing-
to last the Poch
Could
pre-season?
you imagine the state, right? Having to watch Lo Celso and Ndombele try to come back in the squad. You can see Daniel Levy's face written all over it. Oh, look who we've got. We've got your players that you signed. You can now have your chance to manage them again.
Yeah,
it's like
10 years
4
later.
4 or 5 years later, and now you can manage them. It's ridiculous. It's the mentality of this club. It's just a joke. And this is why I don't want Poch back. I'd rather have a new, fresh face, because, to be honest with you, we need someone. For me, we need someone who I feel is. Look, when you go back to a manager, it's like going back to an ex, right? It never works out. Like 99% of the time, it's not going to work out.
We were actually going through managers. We were actually going through it yesterday. Who did we go to? Ancelotti is one. Zidane is
Ancelotti
one.
did work out. Zidane, Heinz, here.
Tottenham managers. What about
Mourinho.
Tottenham managers we've gone back to?
Who have we gone
How
back
many
to?
have we gone back to?
None.
Before. Didn't
What?
we go back to what's his fucking name? I forgot his name now.
Who have we gone back to?
We've never gone back to
No,
someone. have
not
we?
in the
Apart
Premier
from
League era.
only,
No,
we've
not in the.
only
It
gone-
wasn't in the Premier
We've
League.
only
it was
gone
before.
back to interim managers. We've never gone back to actual managers, have we?
I can't remember. I think there was one manager. I need to try and find out who it was, but it was before. But look, managers never do as good as their first stint. They never ever do.
Apart from Ancelotti, Zidane, Heinz.
Yeah, but look at them. They're like world class managers. They're absolute world class managers. So I mean, Zidane. Oh yeah, he went back to Real Madrid, didn't he? Yeah, and won some trophies again.
And
there.
even Jose Mourinho. I know he probably wasn't as good second time round, but still won the league when he went back there.
Yeah, but what's in common of all those people who've won the leagues and won titles? What's the common denominator?
They're big clubs.
Yeah, they're big
With
clubs. They act
different-
like big clubs, and they spend money and they buy top players.
Yeah.
That's the common denominator of all those teams. Tottenham, the way we run our club, is we try and find gems and hope that they turn into absolute players, and then we never sell them to make the money. That's the whole point we actually brought them in the first place to do.
So if the club is run like that, isn't Poch the best man to bring back?
No, this is what I'm saying, because I don't think Poch will work this time round. I think it's going to be worse off this time. He's still got players there that he wanted to get rid of from that squad. He generally, there's still players there right now when he was saying we need a painful rebuild that are still at that club. Could you imagine Poch coming back and Daniel Levy's like, oh, you've got Ndombele and Lo Celso back. Do you want to work with them? Yeah, go on then. And then we've got another season.
I think he would. I think he would actually want to work with Ndombele, Celso. It's Dyer and Davis
but
and people
they're
like
not
that.
gonna
I don't
work.
think he want to.
They will never work. Them two.
He
players,
never got a chance with Ndombele, Lo Celso. He actually never got a chance with them.
He never got the chance with them, but they're just not good enough players in the Premier League. They're just not. Look at where they are now. Right now, they can't even. Ndombele can't even get into the Napoli team, and they're top of the league. Right, he's hardly playing for them.
He does.
He comes on, but what is that? Is that what we're going to use him for? We're going to have a £60 million player on 200 grand a week, and we're going to use him for 10 minutes in a game.
No,
Better than paying his wages to be out on loan.
Yeah, but he doesn't really offer much, does he? He just stands around and he just absolutely gets destroyed in the midfield. And he might play that one killer pass every now and again, but it doesn't do it consistently. He doesn't have the mentality of what you need to be a club that wants to compete. Look, Daniel Levy wants to. My opinion, all he wants to do is compete for that top 4 position. That's it. So for me, I'd rather get someone like a De Zerbi, who's at the moment he's showing what he can do with very, very limited funds, right? And he's built a really good continuity within that Brighton club at the moment. For me, him or Gallardo, I think if you want someone on the cheap, you do things a cheap way. It's one of them two for me.
I think the
Poch,
name.
do you know why with Poch, right? I think the problem with Poch is that if Poch, let me give you a scenario. If Poch comes back to this club and gets us to a position where we're challenging for top 4, and Poch goes, oh yeah, we need to now go and get the next level of players. You think Daniel Levy's going to let him do that?
I think Poch, if he comes back, like I said, I think everything's in place. Not everything's in place for him, but I think a lot is in place with him. With a lot of the players that we have brought in, I think he will get the chance to get rid of the players that he wants to get rid of, because he got the chance to get rid of the players he wanted to get rid of at the start when he first came in.
Yeah.
So I think Poch can work. I really do, and I think the players that we've brought in are literally perfect for him. I really do.
He has unfinished business, Danny.
Unfinished business.
Yeah, he has
Come
unfinished
on.
business with an owner who doesn't want to be competitive, and that's the one thing that Poch always kept saying, right, all the time is we want to be a club that's challenging for Premier League, challenging for titles. Conte's saying the exact same thing, right? And then he comes out saying, but we need basically saying the club need to decide what they want. Are we 5th, 4th, 7th, 6th, 5th?
Yeah.
And he's basically telling the fans the club need to decide what they want to be. Do they want to be a top 7 club? Do they want to be a top 6 club? Do they want to be a top 3 club? Poch had very, very high ambitions for Tottenham. That's why we got to the level we got to. We were just very unlucky in a lot of situations why we never won trophies. Also, adding to the fact that we didn't sign players for 2 windows. We had a really lack of depth in the squad. And it's kind of the same thing we're seeing right now. Again, it's still lack of depth. I know we've got a bit more depth now, but have we got the right players in for the manager and stuff like that? And for me, it's just, I just think someone like Poch, with the ambitions that he has, right? I just don't think it matches the ambitions of the club. That's why he got sacked in the first place, because he was basically saying,
Yeah, and we're regretting it ever since, aren't we? We're regretting it ever since.
Daniel Levy's regretting it. Of course he's regretting it, right? Because he's an idiot because he didn't back the one manager that he should have backed. I've always stated this, right? That if there's any manager that ever deserved any full backing, it was him. For what he did with the resources that he had, right? He overachieved massively at Spurs, right? Mm-hmm. And I think he was the one person that if you're going to give your funds to, you give it to like he said, painful rebuild. We were in that position where we were floating between 1 and 3rd. That's where we were. We were around that position. And he wanted to try and compete to win the title. And we never got the players to do it. And it will happen again. The same thing will happen again. I can't see him coming back unless Daniel Levy is serious about challenging for the Premier League. That's my opinion.
You say how well he did without the resources. I mean, he's going to have a lot more resources now than last time when he was here. We went through a year and a half without signing anyone.
Yeah, I get that, but are you happy to go through what we went through last time, where we're always the nearly boys? We're always the nearly boys.
But it's different. It's not
different.
like that. Football is not like just because it was just like that last time, it'll be the same this time. That's not how football works.
It will be the same. People need to understand it's going to always be the same under this ownership. Until the ownership have a plan of what they want to do, it's always going to be the same. It's always going to be the same. That's why I said I don't care whether I don't care which manager comes in my opinion. I want De Zerbi or Gallardo because I think they will work. They're managers who don't have expectations to go and win a title like someone like Poch does, right? They will do what the club wants them to do, right? That's what the club needs. They need a manager who's going to listen to them, who's going to accept players from the club and accept some of the players from the manager or the scouting department or whoever brings in the players, the recruiters. And that's what they need. Someone like Poch, he's too ambitious for what the club want to achieve, which I don't think they want to achieve anything on the pitch. That's just my opinion, and I just think
we may as well bring in Sean Dyche or someone like that. Then bring in Sam Allardyce. You know what I mean?
Boys, I've been saying Ryan Mason in. Yeah. I've been saying Ryan Mason in. Honestly, because
that's not what I want, Mason.
Because do you know why? Because it honestly really doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what manager comes in, and I want to ask all of you boys this question, right? What is it that you want as a Spurs fan from Tottenham? What do you want to see Spurs do?
Win trophies.
Josh?
Win trophies. But one set. Look, I want to say...
Are we going to win trophies under Pochettino if he's not back like the way he was last time? He'll manage the way he was last time.
No, definitely not.
He won't be managed the way he was last time, though.
Why do you say that then, though?
Because Conte hasn't been managed like that.
It's true.
But he has been managed like that.
No, he hasn't.
No, he hasn't.
He's been restricted. Yes, he has.
Danny, under Pochettino, we went 18 months without making one signing. We're spending 100 million minimum every transfer window at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're spending money, but again, we're not getting the right players in for the manager.
Okay, you can argue that, but it's not 18 months without signing, though, is it?
Yeah, but all right, forget the 18 months without signing. I'm talking about the whole policy and strategy of this football club, right? Where are we gonna follow a vision of what Pochettino wants, right? I told you before, he wants to win Premier Leagues and Champions League. That was what he kept spouting all the time for years. He kept saying he wants. Why do you think we always in the cup competitions he always took them lightly and not serious? Because
we didn't have a squad.
Yeah, we didn't have a squad. Exactly. Whose fault is that we didn't have a squad?
Levy.
Yeah, he had to play. He had to play with Winks and Sissoko for that.
And Onuma, he made Onuma, didn't he? And
this is what I'm saying. Onuma, bloody Onuma.
Yeah.
I mean,
but haven't we progressed as a football club since then? Look at the midfield options we have now. You know, Bentancur, Sarr, Skip, Højbjerg, Bissouma.
Bentancur under Poch. Bentancur and Højbjerg under Poch, because you know his high pressing. I think that would be amazing.
I agree. Danny, can you not see that we're in a different space as a club now as we were when Poch was last here?
Of course, I'm not saying we're not, but I'm just saying it's the way of the structure and the plan of this football club, which is why I don't think any manager is ever going to succeed to do the one thing that I want is to see trophies. I want nothing more than to go down Tottenham High Road and celebrate an FA Cup win or a big trophy win. I want to see that in my lifetime, right?
Look, trophies are not guaranteed under any manager, are they? They're not guaranteed under any manager. But Poch was the one that got us the closest out of everyone with limited resources.
Of course, Ben, but what I'm saying is why I don't want to be the Nearly boys again. I want to have a manager and an ownership that's ambitious.
So Ryan Mason in then.
Yeah, Ryan Mason in.
So you don't want to be the Nearly boys, but you want Mason in. That doesn't make sense.
Because what's the point of getting our hopes up to that point where we're going to just fail at the last minute again, right? Because we're not going to we're going to be one or two players short of what we needed to do, or we're going to have an owner who just about backs the manager enough to satisfy him, and then when he really needs to fall back in, he's not going to get it. Look, I don't believe Poch coming back here. I believe it's going to be the same way that it was. He might be able to rebuild the squad in his own image, but I don't think that he's going to succeed. I don't think he will.
This squad is in a lot better state than when Poch went into that original squad. Like 100%. Much better.
100%.
Well, we all know he's coming back anyway, so we all know he's going to come back in the summer. Conte's not staying.
Danny's going to get back on the train if he comes back. You watch.
Personally, I wanted to see De Zerbi. I genuinely don't want him because I'm going to feel sorry for Poch when it all goes tits up.
Josh, any closing words?
No, just the fact that it's got dark, so I look like.
I can tell.
It was fine before, but nothing really.
All right, I think we'll end it there, guys. But big up to both of you for coming on today. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Danny. Any closing words from you, Danny?
Let's just
Mason in. Mason in. The fans are the problem. Give it to us.
Let's just hope Levy fucks off within the next 5 years. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, you never know. We might have a new owner by the time Poch comes back.
I don't think they're interested in selling the club.
Never know.
No, I don't think so either. But we'll have to wait and see. But look, I just feel that whoever comes into this position, until the ownership mentality at the top changes, it won't change throughout the whole club, right? That's the problem. It's the mentality. This has always been the biggest issue, and the mentality stems from the top. It's the core of the club, right? If the owners don't have that ambition to say, I want to win a trophy, that's what I want to do this season, that is my goal, that is my target, then we're never going to, it doesn't matter who the manager is. The only way we win a trophy is if we're lucky. So it doesn't matter who the manager is, to be honest with you. For me, anyway.
All right. I think we'll leave it there. Big up to you guys. We'll see you all next week for another panel show. But thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Show the guys some love in the comments as well. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always,
come on, you Spurs.